All right. Well, let's get going here. Thanks for attending another Ivinex webinar. This one is on syntax codes and equations. It's a big one because syntax codes and equations, or just syntax codes themselves, can really extend Ivinex. How it works. Well, we'll get into that in a minute, but there's a lot to learn in this webinar. So, my name is Brett Lund, and I'm going to be the host. And a couple quick notes: if you have any questions, there is a chat icon on the Join Me tool. You can use it to ask questions during the webinar, and I'll do my best to answer them. The only audio that will be heard is my own. And without any other, starting details here, I think we'll just get going and dive in. Okay, so let's talk initially about syntax codes and what they are. It's a method, like a little thing that you type into Ivinex that allows you to retrieve data in some way. You can call to specific fields, for example, and it can return back to you the data from that field. You can do a couple things like traveling through links or calling to modules in some way using syntax codes. It's actually pretty cool stuff. Over here on this left-hand side, I've got a kind of a rundown of the different kinds that you can use. The first one is called user syntax, and that is a way to retrieve data from the user manager area. That's your actual Ivinex users. So anything stored in there, any field in your user manager, first name, last name, phone number, extension, all of that kind of stuff can be retrieved using user syntax. Field syntax, that's a way to call to, a module, the data module in your system, like your activities module, or maybe you've created a contact module. Field syntax works for that kind of thing. Table syntax is a little different. It's kind of a way to output a table of information. It has its own specific syntax that you need to use, but the end result is it returns back a kind of a list of records is what it does. So instead of a specific field that I'm asking for, I could return a list of records. And then custom syntax, I won't really be covering that in this because it's not needed. But we do have the ability to sometimes, for some clients, we will create a custom syntax that we will instruct you on, where you can do extra things that are kind of outside of what Ivinex does normally. So I just wanted to bring that up, but it may not apply to you or your Ivinex site. All right, so I think the first thing we'll talk about is the user syntax and how to use it. Again, this is a way to get data from the user fields in your user manager. This is the list that you can use, and it's actually the syntax that you would type to retrieve that data. And kind of how it works is the default type thing would be to return the value of the currently logged in user, so yourself. If you're logged into Ivinex and there's some, a static field or maybe even a email template or something along those lines that includes a user, first name, user, last name, which user? It's going to be you, your data that it auto pulls in to that area. So let's show an example of that. I'm going to jump into the demo site here. And zoom in a tiny bit. Okay, so most commonly, I would say probably email templates is where you would use a user syntax. Here is a email template. Let's go full screen on that. Maybe you need to send something to somebody, and in the signature area, maybe more than one person uses this email template. And so whoever happens to send this email using this email template, maybe it would just pull in their first name and their last name, maybe their phone number, maybe whatever data you need to, and it would customize itself based on who's sending this email. So let's go back to the slide real quick. So you start all of these with the opening bracket like this, and then you type in user with a capital U, and you have a colon, and this space right here that I'm showing, it's really not, you don't need it. You are not required to put any spaces in here at all. You can if you want. It doesn't break it, but it's not required. So opening bracket, uppercase U in user, a colon, and then the name, the actual name of the field you're calling to, and then an end bracket. That would consist of the entire code there to output the first name of the currently logged in user. So I'll go back here. That's what I've got here. User first name, and I've got a user last name. So let's actually see that in action. I'll go to a contact. Pick old Joe Tester here, my tester contact. And I'm going to simulate sending an email to him. I'll click this. I'm going to pick that template. And you'll see that this part, instead of being user first name, user last name, it's actually got the first name of the user that I'm logged in as, which is the Ivinex demo user, and it's populated that for me. So if I was logged in as somebody else, the values here would be different. It would be like, Joe Smith or, whatever, Mary Smith, whoever happens to be logged in. So that's kind of nice. User syntax, most commonly used probably in email templates, I would say. Alrighty. We could probably maybe take a quick look at the user fields just to confirm where that data is stored. In the admin area, in your user manager, we'll click on a user. And these are the fields I'm actually calling to. Give me the value of that, give me the value of that, but all of these are available. Okay, so that's probably it about user syntax. It's pretty straightforward. All right, let's talk about, before I get into the field syntax part, I think I need to explain a few things about how Ivinex operates. It'll certainly help in the understanding of troubleshooting or best practices. For a custom module, like say you create your own module, like a contact module here. You create your own module and you pick, create your fields and everything. That would be considered, not out of the box module. It would just be, whatever you created in your system. But for every module that you create, there are certain system fields that are always there. Whether you can't create them, our system creates them when you create your module. So first name, last name for a contact module is stuff that you would create. But out of the box, Ivinex would, I'm not showing them all there. Okay, I'll show you what they are on the slide. The fields that are created and these are always there, the created by field, the created date field, the modified by field, and the modified date field, and then the record ID. And I'll tell you what each one of these is and why it's important to know this. One, the created by field, when a record is first created in Ivinex, the user that created that record is stored in this field, and it doesn't ever change. It's always going to be set to whoever created it. The created date, of course, is the date the record was created, and that's just a one-time thing. When you very first create a record, who did it, when did it happen. We also store the modified by, who is the very last user in Ivinex that modified this record, that's stored, and the modified date, when was it last modified, and then the record ID. The record ID is a unique number. It's always going to be a number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you have 10,000 records, then the very next one you create, it's 10,001. That's the record ID. And it is module specific, meaning each module starts at 1 for the first record. And so a contact module with one contact would have a record ID of 1, and an account module with an one account record would have a record ID of 1 as well. So that's kind of how that works. One slight confusion possibly. We actually call it the record ID. You would pick it as the record ID, but to call it, this is just the way it's displayed to people, how you read it. It says, I am the record ID, but in Ivinex, it's actually called the collection ID. In the past, we used to call it the collection ID visually when you were looking at it, but that confused people. People better understood record IDs than collection ID. And so just a note, if you ever need to use field syntax to get the record ID, it's got to be like this, collection_ID, and I'll show that to you in the admin tool here in just a minute. Okay, so these fields are always there. So just know that you can always call to them at any time. Now let's talk about your own custom fields that you add to the system, and how Ivinex deals with fields, how it names them, and maybe some strangeness of how it operates that I'll clear up here. For every field that you create, you give it a name, and that shows up in the label. Whether you choose to show the label or not, it's going to have some kind of name that you're going to give it. And so there's a couple settings for a field. It's what's the name, and what type is it, and that kind of thing. And so when we use field syntax, we've got a couple options for calling to this field. We can call it by its, not the displayed name, but something that is kind of like the Ivinex name of the field. And Ivinex also gives every field a unique ID. So you can call it by its Ivinex name or by its Ivinex ID. I'll show that in a minute. Now, if sometimes you might create fields with the exact same name. So contact birthday, 2 fields in the same module, same name. How does Ivinex deal with that? The very first one you create will be the contact birthday, kind of like you did there, and it's going to have its own ID. And the very next one you create is going to start numbering them. So if I had 10 of these fields all named the same, the first one would be like this with no number. The second one would have a 0. The next one after that would have a 1. Next one, 2, and on and on and on. So our system starts naming them because everything truly needs to be kind of unique in our system. So just a thing to note on that. So let's take a look at an actual field in the admin and see how what the Ivinex name is. So I'm going to pick the contact module here. Okay, so to know what the Ivinex name is, I just go in the admin and I click on a field. Okay, now this is my label. Uppercase F for first, a space, and then an uppercase N for name. First name, that's the name of the field. But how does Ivinex reference it? It references it like this, which is no uppercase characters, no special characters, really, and any spaces are represented by an underscore, like that. And it's automatically done. So if I rename this to first name, I don't know, some other, word out here or something, or a dash or whatever, Ivinex is going to translate that into something slightly different. So you never use field syntax this way, where you call it by its label name, because it won't work. Ivinex doesn't know what this is. You always call to it like this. Okay? or you can use the ID. And where do I find that out? I just click on a field. That's the Ivinex name. That's the ID. Okay, so again, automatic modifications that are done to your field by Ivinex is everything will always be lowercase. Spaces will be replaced with underscores. All non-letter number punctuation, if I put last name ... or dash, I don't know, $sign, those things will be removed out of this name. And if there are two fields with the same name, we just start numbering them. Okay. So back to here, and we'll zip along. Okay. And what's this slide all about? This slide is kind of a demonstration of how data is structured in Ivinex and how field syntax is structured. So the first one is I've got this gray box, and it represents a data module, which holds, the following. It holds a data record, and inside each record, there are data fields. Okay, so that's the three pieces for your data. The field I'm calling to is right here, but it is part of a record that is part of a data module. And there are a few things that we can use in field syntax that are available to us at these three levels. One is, at the biggest level, the data module. It is possible to use the name of the module in field syntax, and you can use the ID of the module in field syntax. The ID of the module is always found by going in the admin, clicking on a module, and then if you look right here in this module details, you have an ID right there. And I know that a little while back in some versions we weren't showing the ID, but newer versions of Ivinex should have this right here, the ID of the module. Okay? At the data record, records really don't have names. I guess the field would maybe be the name of the record. I don't know, like first name or an account name or something. But how we think of it is it's a unique record, and that's like the record ID. So you could call, give me a record ID 5 or something like that. And then you've got the data fields themselves. Each individual field, they have both a name and an ID. So I guess the ID of the record could be considered a data field. It's the record ID. But I just kind of wanted to show that a record could have multiple fields in it. So those are kind of the three pieces. All right, so the most simple level of field syntax is simply, instead of like the user thing that we did, field syntax always starts out with an opening bracket, a capital F for field, a colon, and then you call to the data field you want, and then you close the bracket out. Okay, and so what does this field syntax actually mean? It means give me the value of a specified field from this data module, and this is the context of where I am in Ivinex. So that's probably the most important thing to understand, is the context of where you are when I go to get this value. So let's explain that a little bit more. Okay, I have an email template over here, and this email template has field first name and field last name right here. So it is looking for a first name field and a last name field in this email template. Now, if I was just going to email from here and insert that template, it says Dear Nobody. Okay, so why? Why is it doing that? Why doesn't it have a first name and a last name? And the thing is that where I'm at in Ivinex right at this moment, when I invoke this email template, that's where I'm looking for the first name and the last name, at least at this simple level of field syntax. I'm saying, give me the first name and last name of where I am right now in the system. Okay? So from an email template, emailing from here, there's no first name and last name right here, so I get nothing. If I go to the contact module, where I actually do have a first name and last name, right there. So when I invoke my email template now, what's the context? The context is this record, this specific record. So give me the first name and last name of this specific record. So if I pick the email template now, I get Dear Joe Tester, which just happens to be the first name and last name of this record. Okay, so context is important. Even if you automate, if you use workflows to automate emails, there's always going to be a starting point. So if you include field syntax in an email template, then maybe that is used for automatically sending an email, the starting point is always going to be some kind of record, and so create your field syntax with the starting point in mind. That's the probably the most important thing about that. What's the trigger? Something changed with my contact record. Send the email. Use this email template, and because something changed here, all my field syntax I can call to any field here. Okay. All right. These other ones are a little more complicated. Okay, so here's another way you can use field syntax. Same starting point, opening bracket, field with a capital F, a colon, calling to a data module, another colon, then the actual data field, and then close the bracket. So what does this actually mean? The plain language explanation of that is I am asking for a field's data that will be available to me after maybe like a link has been created. Okay, because I'm in one record, maybe I'm in a contact module, and I'm looking to get some data from an accounts module ahead of time. Maybe I'm going to link a contact to an account, but I need some data before that link happens. That's probably one of the only times you're going to kind of use this. I mean, I guess you could use it a few other ways, but that's probably one of the best ways to use it is to call out to a module that I'm going to link to and grab some data from it. Okay, so I'm going to show just one way of doing that. I've got a module here called Demo Syntax. And I think I've gone, sorry, I went a little too far. Before I show you that one, I kind of want to show you just the normal field syntax. I've showed you it in an email template. I want to show it to you in a static field. So I'm going to reverse and back to the basic field syntax just for a moment. I think, no, I'm sorry guys. I'm going to talk about chaining later. That's where this one comes into effect. So never mind. We're going to stick with what we're talking about. All right. So that is, I'm going to go to this module right here, Demo Syntax, and I've got a field here called Default Value. So we're back to this example right here where I'm saying I'm going to call to a data module, give me a field from some module. That's what I'm demonstrating right now. So what you'll see in here is I've got a field, colon, some set of numbers, a colon, and a what looks like a field name, which is first name. So what am I calling to here? I'm saying give me the first name of some module with an ID of 10285. I happen to know that the module is actually the contacts module. 10285 is the ID of that. So you can use IDs and names if you want to. I find using module IDs to be probably the best choice. Okay, so how would I use this? I put it in as the default value. of this field. Now, it seems maybe a little strange, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new one of these demo syntax records. And before the record's even created, I'm going to create it while looking at a contact. Okay, I'm going to look at a contact. I'm going to create one of these. This linked record field is set to automatically link to the contact that I happen to be looking at. And so what do I want to do? I want to grab some information from that linked contact before I even save the record and populate this field with that data. So that might sound a little complicated, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm at the contact record. I'm looking at this record, and I've created a related demo syntax thing down here. All right, so the idea is if I click new, this automatically links, or knows what record I'm looking at, and then this field should get the first name and last name of who I'm linked to or will be linked to. Okay, so contact link, Joe Tester. This record isn't even saved yet. I haven't even saved it. It doesn't exist yet. But I already have some data from this record by using that field syntax, by calling to the same module that this link is linking to. Okay, so that's one trick. That's one way of using this kind of field syntax, data module first, data field. I'm not going to save that. Now, if I was doing that a little differently, like maybe I'm not going to create a related demo syntax that automatically sets that field, instead I just create it from here, then you're probably going to get something kind of weird going on. I'm going to get the actual default field syntax, or that field syntax I put in there will actually output in here because it doesn't know what to do. So I'm going to say new, and I just get this garbage, right? So I would say not very helpful if I'm coming here and clicking new because it doesn't know the link yet. But if I do it the other way around, it's very helpful. So I guess you could use this, with understanding kind of how it's working. You could use it to pre-fill out, fields if you wanted to. All right. Let's see if I'm missing anything on that. No? Okay. Here's a third way of using field syntax. This one's a little different, kind of breaks out of the mold a little bit. I'm going to use the data module, then I'm going to have a colon, and then I'm going to start the bracket. I'm going to do field with a capital F, a colon, the data field I want, and then a closing bracket. In plain language, what does this one mean? This one says, based on an already existing link or some kind of relationship between a couple records, try to match up on something. Try to match this field with something, and maybe you could use it in a filter where give me all the records where they're already linked to this data module in some way. That's, it's a lot of words to explain this right here. It's probably best to show how you could use it. So I've got something right here, this one. Okay, so I'm going to update that. Okay, so I've got two linked records. This one's an account, and it links to my accounts module. Okay, so I can look in here and pick one. And this one is linking to my contact module. Okay, so if I actually that's going to be in effect, so let's turn that one off. Okay. Let's see if I get anything. Okay, it's still linked. Anyway, the idea is it would look like this normally, where every contact in my system I would pick from them and to set that field, to set this field, okay? But what I want to do is, based off what I picked here, the account, I'm going to say Bluebird Manufacturing. That's the one I picked. I want to pre-filter the contacts I can pick from because I only want the contacts that are linked to this company. So let's open up this company. let's take a look who is linked to it. We have two. Mary Smith and Will Smith are linked to this company. Let's try maybe another company. About that one. Okay, so let's take a look. How many? We got Joe Tester and Judy Tester. So if I did this correctly, and I'll show you the filter that made it happen, I should only get Joe and Judy Tester as someone I can pick from. So instead of like this, where it's everybody, I should only get Joe and Judy. No. Why? Because I'm still linked to the other one. I haven't changed that. All right, well, I know why, actually. I'll show you. So I'm going to switch this back so it makes sense. It's going to be Bluebird Manufacturing because we know that only Mary and Will are available to pick. So Mary and Will. Okay, so let's show you the filter on that. I'll explain it. Okay, on newer versions of Ivinex, on linked record fields, you have this thing right here called filter, a filter for a linked record. And this can be used to pre-filter. To pre-filter what I can pick from is what this filter is all about. So here's what I've done here. I'm actually going to copy this out and make a Word document here real quick. See if I can make it a little bigger too. Okay. So what am I doing? I'm pre-filtering this field based on that field because I'm wanting the linked status to be linked to a certain module and the same ID, okay, that this one is linked to. So this is going to be linked to a record with a certain ID, like a record ID, and I want this one, because this whole record right here is going to be linked to a certain account, okay? So there's a relationship there. So based off that relationship, I want to pre-filter all the contacts I can pick from where my linked status of this record is linked to the module that I'm picking from and the same record ID. So all contacts already linked to an account, okay? So back to here. Data module first, then the field, and then field syntax, and then the actual data field I'm calling to. So what I'm matching on is the record ID or the collection ID right there. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of complicated, but that's the idea behind it. Okay. Any questions about that so far? It's kind of this is probably the most common. Some of these other ones are very kind of specific to how you would use them, and it might be a little confusing. Any questions so far? No? Okay. All right, we're going to move on. That doesn't look good. All right, so there's a couple other ways you can use field syntax. You can chain. You can chain to move through multiple fields or a path to get to the value you want. And there's also some codes for specifying what is returned back to you. Okay, so chaining is most typically used when you have like a linked record or something, like I've been showing you. That linked record field is more than just a link to a specific record. It can also act as a conduit to travel through, okay? So I could travel through the linked record by calling to the linked record name and then putting another colon and then calling to a field from the record I'm actually linked to. So how that would look is I could build some field syntax that says, hey, right here where I'm at, and I actually did it here, where I'm at right here, let's, maybe I can grab this and make it a little bigger. Oh, great. Okay, a little larger. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm saying call to the field called the contact link. That's this field right here. Go through that field, and then where am I? I'm in the contacts module at that point, and then give me the phone number of the contact I'm linked to, and do the same for the cell phone and the email address. So that's what, once I link to that, I just want to output the phone, the cell number, and the email. Okay? So let's do that here. Well, I'm already doing it. Okay, so I'm going to link to Joe Tester, and that link is set, and it gives me those values. Now, those values do not exist in this record. They exist in the Joe Tester record. Okay, so travel through there, go to the contact record, return this, and that, and just output it right there. It's just kind of read-only. It's not an actual data field. I'm just looking at the value. Okay, so that's chaining. My starting point is not the contact module. It's this demo syntax module. So the field syntax included the first field, that's this one, and then the next field, which is this one. So that's how you can chain field syntax together to travel through records. And there is no limit. There's no limit on that one. You can travel as far as you want. So there's an example of that I'm going to use here, where let's go look at the code. Okay. So I want to go through the contact link, which is this field. In that contact record, there is a field called account, and that is also a linked record. And then in the account, there is an actual field that stores the name of the account. Okay, so let's visually see that. First, this field, links to contact. That's clear over here. Open that up. This is my contact. Now I've got another field. That links to an account. That's over here. So that first module, second module, third module. Let's open that up. Now I'm here, and this is where the account name is actually stored. Okay? So that's a jump from here into there to return back a value. So if I leave this just like this, you would think that it would work, and it should normally, but it's going to fail, and that's going to take me to the next section of how to deal with that. So I'm going to click Save and unlink that. Now, once I link this, I should get phone, cell, email, and then it should travel through that contact to give me all the rest of this information. But it only gives me this and does not return the rest. So that might be a little confusing. So let's go back to this slide here. Okay. I'm going to jump down to this bottom one to explain it, and then I'll talk about this one here in a minute. Module versus field. Now remember on the slide before how I said modules can have names and fields can have names? Well, you may actually name them the same thing, possibly. You might say, my module is called account, and that's the name of the module. And you might have a field called account, and that's the name of the field. So because Ivinex allows you to sometimes call modules by module names and fields by field names, you could have a conflict. You could have a module and a field called the exact same thing. So we have a little code here I need to add to the training site because it's a little undocumented, but we do have a way to specify, hey, I am calling directly to a field. This, so it's not a module, no conflict whatsoever, just give me the field. And that is, you would use it, it's a capital F and a dash, and that means this is a field explicitly. You're looking for a field by this name. So opening bracket, field, colon, capital F, dash, and then the name of the field that I want. This tells Ivinex, if there's a module with this same name, we don't care. Ignore it. Don't worry about it. And then you can use a T and that's kind of an old school thing. We used to call the data modules tabs. And so the code that's in there for that is the capital T. So if you need to call the module specifically and you know that you might have a conflict with a field, you can use a capital T dash and then the module ID or whatever, and then maybe in conjunction with a capital F dash and a field name. So that should resolve any conflicts that you would have, and that's what we're having here. Why can't I get this information? I've got a conflict, and it's specifically dealing with this field right here. When I called it, Ivinex doesn't know what to do because I also have a module. Somebody created a module, with the name account. Account is the name of the module, so it's conflicting with me. So let's modify this field syntax so that I explicitly ask for the field when I'm asking on the second chain here. So F dash. So now it's contact link F dash account and then the account name. So let's do that for all three. Okay, so now all four of them are looking specifically for a field called account for the second jump. Okay, and again, that field is here. So give me that field only. Let's unlink that. Did I save that? I think I did, right? Let's double check. Yes, okay, great. Okay, moment of truth. Excellent. Okay, so now I've actually returned the account information from my linked contact. So that's a good example of chaining and resolving conflicts with the little F dash or T dash. Okay. All right. Let's talk about pipe syntax or vertical bar. It's represented by, on your keyboard, you would type it's kind of by your enter key, shift, that's the character. Okay, so it's called the pipe character or vertical bar. And what does this do? Whoop, what did I do? Jump forward. Okay, the pipe syntax is a way, sometimes some fields will have a couple values to them. It'll have more than one value. Some fields have an ID value and a kind of a text value to them. All right. Radio buttons, select boxes. Those are the kind of fields that have. Well, there's more than that. Let's see. Radio, select, linked records can have a text value and a ID value. Probably the most important one to remember is the linked record. And so this is a way to specify which value I want. Do I want the ID? The ID is pipe 0. Do I want the text value? That's pipe 1. Probably the thing you'll ever really use the most here is at times you may need to use pipe 0 to say I want to return the ID of what I'm asking for. Okay, so this one probably won't really ever use it. This one you will. And so let's look at some fields that may have that one. Okay, so this is a select box. I've created a bunch of options, and this first column, so when I click the new option, it adds a new line item here, and there's an ID. This is the ID of this option, and this is actually the option name or the text value of it. Okay, so it's possible that I could get the ID of that value, or I could get this. So there's two different ones. Now when setting this field, like if I wanted to set this field via workflow, I could actually set it by an ID or by the text value. But just know some fields have multiple multiple things. This one doesn't, I mean, it has its main ID, which is the ID of the entire field, and then it has the value. But some, like this one, have an ID of the field itself, but every single option have an ID too. Okay? So, let me see here. I created a workflow that will demonstrate this. That's right. Okay, so right here, what I've done is I created a button, and a button you can assign to workflows in newer versions of Ivinex. And what this does is when I click this, my workflow is going to create a new opportunity record in my opportunity module, and it's going to use this value, what account am I linked to, and what's the contact that I'm linked to. And it's going to use these values to create the opportunity and set fields over here to the same value that I have here in a button click. Okay? So I'll create the record, set, this to somewhere and this to somewhere, and maybe even do some other stuff too. So let's take a look at the opportunity module. And yeah, okay, so here's an account field that I'm going to set. Here's a contact field. I'm also going to set that too. So let's go look at the workflow. Right here. Okay. So here's my workflow, and it's a very specific one. I don't know if you watched the last webinar, but when a button is pressed is my trigger. So I want to do this on a button click. And what is the action? Okay, the action is I'm going to do a bunch of things. I'm going to set the owner of the opportunity to the current logged in person. And the account is a linked record here, and it's a linked record there. So I'm going to workflow set my linked record of my new opportunity to be pipe 0 or field account pipe 0. Why do I do that? Because linked records are one of those things where you can essentially make it display anything you want. Okay, here's this one. Where is it? There. What does it display? The account name. I could add anything. I could say maybe it's the account fax or just some text, or a dash or anything from that record. It can display anything. Okay, so that can be hard field syntax-wise to predict how to set it. But the thing to know is that it is always linked to some record, and that record always has a record ID, okay, or an ID. So in my workflow wizard here, my workflow, I'm going to set it using pipe 0 so that I know that whatever record that this one is specifically linked to, my other field will be linked to the exact same record too. Okay, pipe 0. Same with the contact. My contact here is a link, and the contact over there is going to be a link. So I use field account underscore contact, the name of the field, and then pipe 0. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm even going to go a step further, and I'm going to set a notes field over there on my opportunity, and that notes field is going to get information from the account I'm linked to here. It's going to output, I'm using the F dash for that, because remember that conflict, I'm getting around it there. But I'm going to grab whatever account I'm linked to, give me its address, its city, its state, and its zip, and put all that information into the notes field of my new opportunity that I am creating. And then the rest of this is kind of irrelevant. So that's the tricky part I've explained. So let's do it. Okay, here's my record. I am linked to, well, let's link to a contact here real quick. That one. Okay. So Bluebird Manufacturing. So this is what my opportunity should be linked to. And here's the address information that I'm going to grab from it. And then let's look at the opportunity real quick. I've got a notes field right here, and that's going to have all that address information in it. Okay? So here we go. This one, click me. Did something happen? I don't know. Let's go check. Hopefully something happened. Here's some, okay, button opportunity. I know for sure that that's the one because I told it to name it the button opportunity. Okay, so what did it do? I clicked the button. It created this record. The name was the name. The owner was the current user. That happens to be me. I set the account to the same account of my demo syntax record, set the contact to the same as demo syntax record, and then I grabbed all that information from the account I was linked to over here, and I populated my notes field with that. I also set the lead date, not really important. But I did all of this stuff with field syntax, using field syntax to grab data that I needed or to specify how to set a field a certain way, all done through the field syntax on the workflow. Any questions about that so far? Looks like we're running a little long here. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to explain as much as I can. So, any questions by anybody? Okay. Table syntax. At the very beginning, I said that there is a way to return a list of records. Table syntax is documented. It is on the training site. But I'm going to go over the details here and show you how you could use it. The idea is it lets us output a table of data, or like multiple records from a data module in an email or a static field. That's kind of the only two places you can really use it. And the syntax, it may seem a little complicated, but it's actually pretty simple to understand. The syntax you put together is like this, where the first you say open bracket, table with a capital T, so kind of like the user and the field and all that, capital T, colon, and then we'd say what module we want. Where does the data come from? And then fields, those would be a comma-separated list of field names, the actual names, or the Ivinex names, or IDs. If you leave it blank, then the default will be displayed. So what does the default equal? It means the columns that you have set up for that module, the default columns, is what is returned if you don't specify, okay? So in your, like when you're building a filter and you say, for this filter, I only want that column, this column, and that one right there. So that's kind of what you're doing here. You're saying, give me that field, comma, this field, comma, and that field. So that if you don't specify it, it's the default. The style, you can say, make it HTML. HTML is actually going to look like this, going to look like a table, or text. Text is, all this formatting's gone, and they're just kind of like lines of data. Order by, you do have a way to say order by. And then the last value that you put in here is how many to return. Like, I don't know, maybe it could be the thousands of records, possibly. So you could limit that in some way and say just 10. That's all I want is the max number returned is 10. You can do that. Okay, so let's show an example of that. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is this record. I came over here and I created 3 tasks, and they're right over there. Test 1, 2, and 3. They're all 3 tasks. And what I'd like to do is I would like to output this record's related activities in a table using table syntax, and that's going to render in a static field. Okay, so it looks like that. Here's my table in a static field, and it's just mirroring this data over here. So maybe not so useful for activities, huh? But what if it wanted to output all my related, whatever you need, whatever I happen to be linked to, related zip codes, or related opportunities. So in a table. That's one way to use it. Let's look at the code for that. Close this, go to here. So I've created a static field, and then inside the static field, text to display, I've got this. So I'm going to copy that, see if I can make it a little bigger. Paste. Oh. Hey. How about like that? Should be able to see that. Okay. So this is saying table, which module, activity module, this little pipe/pipe thing, that's where you would specify the fields. I could say field 1 and comma field 2, but I didn't, so that means it's going to return whatever my default is. I want an HTML. I've picked my collection underscore ID, and then you have this little caret here, which says which way do you want to sort it, but I'm actually sorting it by the collection ID, which is the record ID. I have a little caret here, and then that means sort by collection ID, descending order, so newest at the top. Okay, you could, that's just something you can use. And then I left off the last bit, which is the number of rows returned. I just said, give me them all. So that outputs in a static field. So that's one way to use it. You could also use it in an email template, which is probably a little bit more helpful. Maybe your boss says, hey, email me, or daily, I want a list of all the open tasks for my opportunity, or something like that. I don't know. You could do it by going to an email template and putting that code in the email template like that. It's the same thing, but remember, context is important. Where is this email sent from? It better be some place where you're going to get the right data, right? So for this demonstration, my demo syntax record has what I need right here. Here's my activities. So if I email from here, or a workflow emailed from here, and it used that template, here's a list of all my tasks for this one record right here. So that's another way you could use table syntax. Any questions about that? Nope. I better speed it up. It's getting long here. Okay, so equations. We're also going to talk about equations because you use field syntax to do it. Okay, so Ivinex supports the following different kinds of mathematical symbols: addition and subtraction, multiplication, division, all these kind of things. And you can perform equations using field syntax. The first thing to note, the most important thing, is that you can't build you can only build equations using integers and decimal field types. Okay, so you can't take a text field, which could have maybe a value of red, and subtract it by another text field, which is, oranges or something. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So only integer and decimal fields will work when you're doing equations. Okay. Another thing to know: equations are not evaluated on import, or if an equation input is changed by a workflow. What does that mean? It means equations are done through JavaScript. So that's on the front end of your screen. You need to be looking at the record for the equation to evaluate. So if you import a bunch of records, the equation will not run automatically. Okay, so that's important to know. And if a workflow changes something behind the scenes, this may actually be resolved in the newer version, but currently, if you make a change on a record and a workflow then does something else, the equation will not evaluate because you weren't necessarily the person responsible for the change. You didn't view the difference. You didn't see the equation evaluate. So equations are only evaluated when you can see them. Hope that makes sense. So here's just some simple examples of building an equation. You would use some field syntax. You would call to, like, say, a field, and then closing bracket, the whole field syntax thing, and then put, the symbol that you want to use, and then maybe another field. So shipping price plus extra fee, would evaluate out to something. Or you could just do something like, shipping price plus $4.50, $4.50. Very straightforward. Subtraction, same thing. Multiplication, same thing. Same idea. But you can do something more complicated. You could say this field times that field times this field. You can use, parentheses to evaluate equations inside the parentheses and then break out and do something else and then another parentheses. So you can really do some complicated equations if you wanted to. I'll show you those. All right, so I built a few fields here. And what do we got? I've got an integer 1, integer 2, and the integer sum. So 10, in this field I have some field syntax that says that field plus this field. That's all it's doing. So we'll just, 22, and that automatically goes to 32 now. And so done. This is a decimal field, which shows decimal points. I've also got it displaying as currency, so it does the $ thing. And this is a little different. I think this one is, I'm not sure. I'd have to go check the equation, what it's doing. It might be times or something like that. And then I've got another field here that is doing something with the integer sum and the decimal sum, and then it's doing something on its own. So any changes here, 15, changes this number, and that number changes because it's based off that and this. So let's go look at what I did. Okay, integer 1 field, integer type. Same for that one. The sum on this one, let me just grab all this out of here. Okay, very straightforward. Integer 1 field plus the integer 2 field equals that. And so where do I put that? I create a new field. It must be an integer or decimal type. And then in the equation part right here, which is blank on these ones, I'm not running equations, they're just storing values. On this one, I actually put the equation in here. And when I do that and I click save, you'll notice it changes how it looks. It's actually read-only at that point. It kind of marks itself as read-only because we're assuming that you want it to automatically figure it out versus you typing in there. Okay, so let's look at this one. Decimal type. Here's a decimal type. And let's look at the equation in there. What is it doing? Oh, yeah, okay. So this one takes the first, adds it to the second, and then I do times 5 at the end. So that's what it does. It takes the value of that, the value of this, and then times it by 5, and then that's what I get in the end. So you can kind of do something different like that if you like. Let's look at this one, the total sum. This one takes the whatever's in there and whatever's in there and then does its own thing. We'll see what that's doing. Make that a little bigger. Okay, so on this one I've added some parentheses. I'm saying inside these parentheses I want you to take the integer sum times the decimal sum, and then when you're all done with that, then divide it by 2 is what I want you to do. So you can see you can kind of build some fairly complicated equations that are all kind of done just automatically while you're viewing it. It's fairly straightforward. So let's pick that. Change something over here. I don't know. Let's 200. That changes, and then that changes. Okay. There is a lot of documentation on these different kinds. An example for every one of them on equations. Any questions about equations? No? Okay. Well, I believe I got through it all. It's a little over an hour. Oh, can take some playing with is the comment I'm getting. Yes, there's a lot to learn, a lot of stuff that I went over. How you use it is up to you. I'm just trying to teach you the tools and the rules and give you some examples of how you could do stuff, but how you end up using it in the end is specific to your company, your processes. Hopefully you learned something from this webinar and you can implement it into your system. All right, so unless there's any questions at all, I'll bring this to the close because I know I ran a little long. Any comments, any other questions? Okay? All right. Well, again, we have the training site. This video will be posted there, and you can learn more about the equations and the field syntax there. What else? Leave me a comment. Get on the webinar list. You're probably already on it. Anyway, I post all webinars on the Facebook page that we've got, and as well as send out emails for those. So that's it for this online training about syntax codes and equations. I hope you learned something from it, and you can build some exciting stuff in your system. So again, thanks for attending, and we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.